That's called the over-under because you get a better grip on deadlifting. He knows that. He was an athlete at Notre Dame. Producing with me in video studio, as always, is Jared, who is not gay. On today, the free show. So if you're watching this on the YouTube, you're not a Mug Club member, you can leave your comments or subscribe because it don't cost nothing. You can follow him at NotGayJared, me at SCrowder on Twitter, or again in the YouTube comments section, or you can send your hate mail. I fulfill my legal obligations. Draw our conclusions. Are we good, Jared?
I mostly get hate mail.
Hey, at Gerald Morgan Jr., at G Morgan Jr. on Twitter. What's the line of the day, Gerald?
We got Lotta Malbec from Washington State.
Sounds like a lot of man you want to hold at midnight. Great show today. We have Stefan Molyneux.
Every time.
Huge.
And we have Roman Millennial.
Ring millennial.
Both of them on the program today, and we have a lot of news to get to. We also have today's sort of meat segment. I guess people have been saying, you kind of hit one segment often, which we appreciate. That's a little more in depth as opposed to just hitting news. Which, thank you, person who I just made up. But today we'll talk about the left and their recent anti-science tirades. Because that kind of wraps up this whole week. It was a weird week. We had the Google diversity issue, then North Korea.
It was almost refreshing to get away from Trump Russia until I got really sick of the Google North Korea stuff. So
trust me,
the news
if that slows down,
they're fixating.
Coming up next week, it's going to be Trump Russia
They're really
again.
fixating on stuff right now.
Well, the FBI did raid Paul Manafort.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
they did. That was refreshing.
So that happened.
Yeah,
glad they did.
Got to bring it back to some familiar ground.
Yep. Good old Paul Manafort. All right. In other news, Face app is under fire. Well, again. This time for their ethnic filters that can make you look black, Asian, Hispanic. What could have possibly gone wrong?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't think I'm not one to be offended or outraged, but I don't know how they didn't see this coming.
I'm pretty sure it's a bunch of Russians up there. I'm pretty sure that's people who make it.
Show that again.
Legitimately. Yep.
They actually release it, so you can do.
It's pretty good.
The President Trump Asian is very believable. Below that, it looks like a Pepe Clarence Thomas. I don't know what it is, but
the black Trump it looks like he's had better days.
Yeah, it looks like he's had better days. And of course, people were outraged. There are people who are professionally outraged, and a lot of people were actually particularly outraged that white people are now able to get scholarships again. So that was something that really. But some of their anger was quelled when they found out that it makes them louder in movie theaters. So it man. And a lot of people thought they were hacked. This was news all over social media.
Yeah, it's true.
Because it went down. Actually, what happened was their servers were crashed when a flood of Chinese men started taking hopeful pictures of their penises. And black guys took pictures of their FICO scores.
I didn't know they had those filters. Is that underneath the other section there?
It just changes your life. Especially when everything, all your online applications, they're all digital now.
I wish I would have known.
Yeah, I love how the presumption is that it's bad to be one of these ethnicities, though.
Yeah.
I mean, they make it seem like, do black people not know what they look like? Are they unaware? Are they unaware?
Well, I don't necessarily know what their standards are. They just, if it's a skin tone thing, fine. But I think they've picked some features which might be considered.
Maybe they don't have mirrors in China.
I don't know.
They just send them out.
Isn't this where they have the giant tongues with the dogs?
That's Snapchat. That's okay.
Snapchat.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's okay though.
Gets passed.
All right. Okay.
Silly.
Moving on. Things that are offensive. Chelsea Manning is now on the cover of Vogue magazine. So we got. Let's just move on like this is going really well. Walmart is taking heat for a back-to-school sign. And it was one of those issues, so you read this headline.
Yeah.
Bring that back up so I can. Walmart markets guns as back-to-school items. I thought, okay, that's fake news. It's glorified. No, it's actually worse if you take it in context. Look at that display. That display is there. It's not like an accidental sign.
No, be the hero.
No, which is why at first it would have seemed like, okay, you see a clear-cut case maybe of employee negligence.
Yeah.
But it's pretty apparent that's not the case when you see pictures surfacing of their anti-bullying campaign for back to school. It seems like they're going with a theme.
Yeah.
I don't know how you get it that off, Walmart.
It was twice now.
Can't fit a rifle in a backpack anyway.
It's all the time. Sorry, Steven, just a second.
At some point, it's just sad.
Yeah, it is.
Associated Press, AP, they wrote this article. How to know if your child is transgender. What experts say.
I gotta hear this.
That's a real article that was written from AP,
Jeez.
which actually, and it prompted a follow-up article directed to children. How to tell if you should switch your parents.
I'd read that. That's better.
It's so bad.
First question is,
terrible.
are they asking you if you're a tranny when you're wanting to play with fire trucks?
Oh my gosh.
How desperate are these just SJW parents to have screwed up children? You gotta wonder at some point.
Yeah, I do think I want an LGBTQ AI5 so bad. Because you see that a lot, and that's not, you think it's an exaggeration. People used to say we were straw manning when we said LGBTQ AAIP.
Yeah.
Someone sent us a picture. I don't know who it was on Twitter. Tweet it back to me at S. Crowder because I was looking for it. I couldn't find it. It had the number 2 in it.
What? Number 2?
It had, I swear to you, the number 2 in the LGBTQA acronym.
It did. These people, these parents are treating it like catching Pokemon. But like, if your Pokemon superpower is like unemployment and suicide, gotta get the LGBTQ AAIP. If you get the P, that's
gotta catch him. Gotta catch them all. Put them in the Marines. All right.
Oh my God.
Great lead-in for Stefan.
Terrible.
All right.
Terrible.
Amid human fears.
Human shields. Oh, sorry.
Fears. These were human fears of being replaced by automation. And we've talked about this. This is an ongoing problem. This is where President Donald Trump says he's going to bring a lot of jobs back. Some of them can't be brought back because of automation. But over these fears, South Korea could be the first country to implement a robot tax.
Oh boy.
This is an actual. They claim it's going to offset unemployment and channel revenue toward welfare programs. Have you been reading about this?
I've been reading about this. Why don't they just let the employers create more jobs?
Yeah, exactly.
No, we'll just tax them to death. We know what's best.
Well, Bill Gates proposed this not long ago.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I think it was something about if a robot replaces an employee.
Yeah.
But if they make $50,000, then we should tax the robot as if it was a person.
Right.
Whatever the normal tax would be for an employee who makes $50,000.
Do you ever just wonder if late life Bill Gates could go back to early life Bill Gates if they'd support the same thing? Do you think early Bill Gates would want a $50,000 robot tax?
Small business Bill Gates would be like, this sucks.
Yeah, this really sucks. But big
doing
business Bill
this.
Gates goes, I can deal with the red tape.
Shut
it
plenty
down.
of money now. I don't care.
We give away enough free Windows 95. What the hell's the difference at this point?
Only the best.
So, robot tax. This is what they're going to be taxing robots. And in a sign of citizen protest, all the robots of South Korea dumped their soju into the Sea of Japan. Will not stand. Now, for those who don't know, people are asking, awesome. We don't have details. While the rates, they're not official. The suggestions for the taxes are a 4% rate for 4% tax rate for jobs lost to automation, 3% for carbon emissions, and then a 2% tax for the guys who keep getting their dicks caught in the robot sex dolls.
There need to be protections for those robots. They really do.
I do not think that is an actual robot sex doll that sells very well.
No. No,
you know what? I say that,
really
but I bet you if you go to
saw a headphone jack and thought it was an opening.
If you go to the wrong corner of Comic-Con, I bet you that's not too far off.
It's probably not far off at all.
It's probably in the middle.
There's Tokyo Comic-Cons.
Right next to Tranny Pikachu, jumping into a Pokeball. Is that guy? And someone just went, wait, what's going on here? No, that's a South Korean. Swanson and R2-D2. What do you think? We also have a Walking Dead panel. You want to go see that? No, I think I want to stay with the R2-D2 guy with a dick in it. All right. So it's been a through line. We'll talk about this with Roaming Millennial. We'll talk about it with Stefan. Stefan spoke with Demore, actually, the guy who released the Google memo, the anti-diversity manifesto. The manifesto, they've been calling it. But there's been a really important through line, I think, this week. And so we can go back to that. That was a memo released about the biological differences between men and women. This was released at Google. If you haven't, we have a ton of videos on it, but Marley was dead to begin with, okay? That happened, and then there was outrage this week. Britain's youngest transgender changed her gender for the third time. And so what happened when people said, hey, you know what, maybe we need to revisit this. Maybe there's something going on. Hate speech, of course, right? This has been so we have Google, hate speech, this criticism of the guy who changed. I don't know at this point, guy or girl. You can let me know. And then there's an article from Slate, and you tell me, because the term anti-science has been thrown around by the left so often, it's lost all meaning. Yeah. So you tell me if this could be misinterpreted that way from Slate, titled "Stop Equating Science with Truth." So I leave the choice to you, scientist.
That sounds like a straw man, Stephen.
So
I don't know about that one.
The left has tried to have a corner on the right being anti-science.
Yeah.
For a long time. The right
like
is anti-science. These are regressive. Yes. These are people who believe that the Earth was created in 7 days, and they don't believe that Florida's gone yet from climate change. So they've straw-manned conservatives as being anti-science for a long time. And it is interesting. We talk about sort of cultural shifts in the pendulum swinging. It's swinging so quickly right now. we were saying for a while, remember we were saying, actually, I think the left is the wing, the umbrella of the anti-science party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people said, well, no, that's just hyperbolic. This was maybe a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And now they're creating articles. They're writing at Slate that we shouldn't consider science truth. And they base it off of a bunch of straw men. So let me read some quotes from this article. She actually writes, it's 2017 and people are still debating in reference to the Google memo whether or not women are intellectually inferior to men and whether we are entitled to a workplace that isn't toxic to people simply based on their gender and sex. That's how Slate of gender and sex. Come on now.
Oh, jeez.
Gender, you mean sex? No. So here's how you know you're about to read a great scientific article. When she references a memo and says that things were in the memo that weren't in the memo.
Oh, yeah. Just counting on people.
The memo
reading
said
the memo.
this, but I read it. It didn't say that. You're anti-science. No, let's continue because I think I can make a case here. She goes on to say it's 2017 and to some extent, scientific literature still supports a patriarchal view that ranks a man's intellect above a woman's. Again, this is using the Google memo as a jumping off point. First off, he never argued that.
No.
my
It
gosh.
literally
No.
never happened.
Do you mean figuratively? No, literally.
Literally
No, never occurs. Now, if you want to get into that discussion about intellect, we've talked about the bell curve and how men tend to occupy both sides of the bell. That's why overall IQ is higher for men, but it's not necessarily a fair representation. But men and women are definitely designed differently intellectually. That's another thing, too, that we see all the time from the left, right? It's men and women are exactly the same. A man can do anything a woman can do, and a woman can do anything a man can do. They are entirely interchangeable. Don't you say any different. Okay. By the way, celebrate diversity.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, but if we do want to have that argument,
self-contradictory.
chess. There's a women's division.
Really?
In World Chess Championship. They can enter the men's division. I mean, like if you look at the top global rankings of all time, it's insignificant.
Wow.
They barely crack it. And then there's a women's only division. Why? Because we're wired differently. But let's continue to see if this gets to some more
time to
salvage
salvage it.
refutation.
There's time to salvage.
She goes on to write, racial taxonomy is conveniently confirmed that enslaving African-American people, that enslaving African, this was before they were African-American.
Yeah,
they were
I don't know. Are they back
Which,
to
by the way,
being
was kind of bad.
African-American
It
or
was
not?
bad. It was a screw job.
It was, yeah.
Was a perfectly reasonable behavior since, as Thomas Jefferson put it, black people were inferior to the whites in the endowments of body and mind. Funny enough, this is the exact same argument this woman and feminists like her use when they justify killing unborn babies. So it's not that far.
Yeah.
We haven't changed so much. Now, she's using these straw men, first off, to vilify, because it's been all hands on deck to vilify the Google memo employee guy, okay? And she's using it to try and shut down dialogue coming from the right, because now the right kind of has a corner on science and on biological arguments, as you see in the realm of cultural arguments. And so what are they trying to say? Just like they tried to say before, this is hate speech. Now it's, well, hold on a second. Science can maybe be hate speech. Oh, hold on a second. I thought science was, no, because I wrote it at Slate. So we did some digging into this writer. And here's just, it might be like those Native Americans who are on their Native American reservations, but then they wear Levi's. The white man makes me live like this. No, they don't. You chose to wear the Levi's, okay?
Yeah.
So here's some history
They breathe better than him.
on her. Out
true,
of this
that's true.
woman's references, 100% are white and 80% are male. Okay, she chose exclusively male advisors throughout her entire education. The undergraduates that she co-supervised have been 66% male. And by the way, just in case you're wondering regarding critical thinking, this isn't just ad hominem for no reason. It's because this person is actually trying to alter the course of scientific conversation in the culture. She was actually duped by Ahmed the Clock Boy. She invited him to MIT.
Oh, no.
So this is the woman who's now making the argument regarding science.
That's it. I'm done with her.
And this is important. I know you're just going to say this is ad hominem. No, the article, we've refuted it at louderwithcrowder.com. But personally, okay, this is why, because Daily Wire wrote about this. She claimed she was gay in 2008. She married a woman that year, okay? But then she divorced her and married a man in 2013. So in her article, she also goes on, I'm just trying to add this all up. She argues without a hint of irony that science, which is not necessarily truth, has caused a dangerously warm planet.
Makes perfect sense.
How'd you figure that one out? Which method was that? The lapsed lesbian now married to a man method? What is it? And see, that's what Daily Wire wrote about that, how often lesbian women end up having more sex with men than straight women and getting pregnant more often. But if people argue that, in many instances, that lesbianism is more byproduct of nurture than nature. We've talked about how homosexuality in men you've seen throughout history, but lesbianism, at the rate that it is certainly seems to be more of a byproduct of nurture. Sociological, not biological. That's hate speech.
Well, the nature part is what you can see in the mirror, generally speaking.
Stop it. It's hate speech because science.
Hate.
So if we argue that men, as in Google, if we argue that men and women are biologically different, that's hate speech. Why? Because science.
There's no safe ground for me
If we argue that it's impossible to biologically change your sex or your gender, that's hate speech. If we argue that, unlike the previous statements I just made, which are scientifically observable, both past and present, that climate change doomsday alarmists are basing economy crippling policy on less than entirely reliable climate prediction models, and maybe we should just slow down a little bit, well, that's heretical speech. Because science. So we've switched it. This is it's hate speech, and then but when it comes to you're a heretic. It is entirely about convenience. And Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about this on Bill Maher. They can't keep their own argument straight. He's talked about the beauty that science was self-correcting, that science was the pursuit of truth.
There needs to be a manual.
No, I don't believe that science necessarily is always. I certainly believe that science can be politically motivated, especially if you look in the realm of grants, if you look in the the realm of scholarships, you look in the realm of where people are going to get federal funding, to get national funding. Yeah, of course that can dictate sometimes, and you would maybe say it, people who are watching in the comment section, big oil. You know, we're paid by them. We're paid by the Koch brothers, Big Oil, and Big Pharma, apparently. So that dictates our science. Yeah.
It does.
We will have zero scientific findings that don't support BP personally.
I actually flew here today, by the way.
Yeah, I want to see seagulls. I want to see seagulls in the Gulf covered in Crisco.
Typically, yeah.
Because I don't give a shit. So they cannot keep their arguments straight. And this is where we are seeing the left collapse under its own weight. We're seeing it with Google. When you look at Google, we'll talk about this with Stefan Molyneux. We have to get going. Where 50% of people at Google actually didn't think this was all that offensive.
Yep.
But they don't want to speak out about it. When you look at people actually just at large, if you say, hey, what if I tell you biologically men and women are different? Most people agree it's not offensive. When you look at people in general, if you say, hey, do you think that you can biologically change your sex? Most people don't think so. Now, most people, and they tend to be right because so do most scientists, but it doesn't matter. Science doesn't matter in this instance, not because of funding, not because of grants, not because of the scientific method, which is what we talk about as conservatives, that grants and funding can obviously alter the course of the scientific method. They argue that science doesn't equate truth because it could be offensive. And here's the problem with that is, what is offensive now? And you see this from Slate. What is considered offensive? There used to be a standard. It was something that was deliberately meant to offend or to harm somebody. Now it's just anything that makes somebody feel bad about themselves. We'll talk more about it with Stefan Molyneux coming up after this. All right, I made a wish. And I wish that we would have our next guest back. And here he is.
I see what you did.
You can follow him on Twitter. You know him over there. But also his YouTube channel is youtube.com/freedomainradio, because it's not his name. I don't know if someone's sitting on his name. But Stefan Molyneux, how are you, sir?
I'm well. How you doing, man?
I'm doing. It looks like a painting behind you, but I assume that's real. You're out in the woods.
I am not in the studio at the moment. I am enjoying some of the natural light that brings out my girlish features. So that is, of course, the plan.
Yes. Well, actually, light just brings out any bad features in my case. The light raking across my face, all of a sudden, Mr. Hyde comes out. But you have a book coming out relatively soon. We'll have you back on for an hour to discuss it. So is this kind of are you going out? Are you sequestering yourself in the final stages of literature?
The end of a book recording, the end of a book production, it's basically like trying to land a helicopter into the side of a mountain blindfolded in cyclone. So yes, I'm trying to sort of really focus on what needs to get done in the world to finish this up. So yeah, I'm not in the studio at the moment.
You know, it's funny because Nage Gyarados used to use it as an excuse. He would say he was finishing his book to go to the Super 8. And then we just found him there with a noose, and it devolved very quickly. So, Stefan, you got an exclusive.
Not my best moment.
No, not well. Among many not so great moments, you got a scoop with James. Am I pronouncing his last name correctly? Damore.
Yeah, Damore.
Okay.
I think it's fine. Yeah.
Damore from Google, the man who actually wrote this anti-diversity manifesto, as the media has called it. What happened there, and why was he so quick to come on your program? Is he a fan? And are there any new developments?
I think he just wanted something fair, something that was going to actually go into the ideas. And I can't speak for him, but I would imagine that in his position, he might have some concerns that the mainstream media might seek to sensationalize and reduce the arguments to a bunch of ad hominems. So I think he just wanted to talk with someone who was going to give the actual intellectual and scientific content of his argument its due respect and airing. And I think he found that the alternative media was, or at least me, was probably going to be there's going to be a better chance that it was going to happen that way.
Yeah, and it seems like it's been well received. I actually saw it in my YouTube trending feed.
I saw that
like
too.
a unicorn.
I'm like, this guy, it has to be one of those situations where Google was like, if we bury this one, we're in deep crap. Like, we just gotta get it out there.
Wait, it was in your trending feed too?
It's in the real trending.
Well, see, that would suggest that they told us it was organic algorithms. I would suggest it's curated if it's in mine and yours.
No, they said trending is for everybody. Trending is not curated, apparently.
That's not what they told us. Sorry, okay. We're trying to get to the bottom of these Google algorithms. Apparently, they maybe have some ladies unfit for tech in charge of them. What do you? What's your opinion on this? Because you've been a good communicator on this issue. I think we both agree. Listen, when it comes to Facebook, YouTube, it's not about the First Amendment. But when we're talking about freedom of speech, when we're talking about that topic, we're not just talking about government intervention. We are talking also about this idea of self-censorship, and specifically companies being dishonest with their censorship practices. This seems as though Google can fire whoever they want, but they're firing him for something they claim that they would never do, for his opinion. Is that kind of what you've been presenting? Is that how James feels, or does he think it's just a wrongful termination, period?
Well, I think, in the interview he said, he loves Google. He's very enthusiastic about the mission. And, who doesn't want as much information to be available at people's fingertips for them to research and so on? So I think that the concern is that there's so much power in the hands of these companies. Like way back in the day, you could pick up the phone and you could crab about the phone company and you could talk your politics with your friends, and the phone company didn't do anything. They didn't say, well, we're going to put you on the super crackly line, or we're going to put you on the line which has seals mating in the background so nobody can hear each other. I always tried to find that line, never could.
No, so it's on Vonage somewhere. You have to enter a special code.
That's right. So I think the idea that we used to just be able to have conversations and not worry about the content and how it would be transmitted or how it would be viewed or how it might be skewed. Now, of course, with the amount of power that these companies have, it's very tempting, I think, when you get people who have an agenda in there, and the agenda is not allow for the open discussion of ideas. And I think what is alarming people about this is, okay, this is, Google, I'm sure, has this thing where they say, hey, if you've got great ideas about how to make the company better, we value diversity of opinion, we value diversity of thought, we're a scientific, technical company, we value all of this information, we value this enthusiasm. And he listened, and, like most of us when we were young, he thought, hey, I'm sure that's what they really want. And then he went and did it.
It's like a puppy bringing back a dead bird. He thought we'd like it. Like, not in the house!
I chewed its head off for you so you could get to the juices quicker, right? So he listened, like most of us when we're young, we listen to what people say they want and we think that they're realistic.
Right.
I want a gentleman. Anyway, but so I think that he, with great enthusiasm, went in and said, I've got a way to make this diversity thing work better. Let's start with the science. Let's design things to leverage gender strengths and avoid weaknesses and so on. And a lot of this stuff has come out of feminism as well, saying here's how we can balance work and family. Here's how we can leverage women's strengths and so on. So he went out and he did this. And I think if you look at the ferocity with which he was dealt with internally, I think people do have a concern that they may not be objectivity in how Google approaches data. And that, of course, makes people feel nervous about everything else.
Yeah, and I do think it's important. We talked about this with Joy Villa, and I think we'll probably talk about it with Roaming Millennial. When the media, it's a perfect example of, my God, when we started the show, people thought CNN was still actual news. When you and I were starting in our den out of Detroit.
I was guilty of it.
You were guilty of it, and you were relatively conservative. Naturally, you just weren't as plugged in. But when you see them say, Anti-Diversity Manifesto says females unfit for tech jobs. It is so clearly a lie by omission because he goes out of his way to stress points as to where women would actually have advantages over men and encourages Google to place more value on these points, like cooperation in the workplace. There are a multitude of factors that he lists there, and we can't list them all, but people can go read the memo.
Sorry to interrupt, but so I know this kind of guy because I worked in software, I managed an R&D department and all of that. he had a problem to be solved. Right. He's like, okay, how do we increase the proportion of women in tech jobs? So like any engineer, like any sort of rational, sensible person who maybe doesn't always understand the eddies and flows of human backlash and interaction, he said, okay, I have a problem to be solved. And according to the diversity training that I take, that everybody wants to close this gap, get more women into tech, more women into management. So he says, okay, well, why aren't there a lot? Now, the answer of, well, it's just sexism, blah, 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 that's not an answer. It doesn't really solve anything. It just, it castigates, it blames. It's a nagging kind of answer. It's a non-answer. So he said, okay, I want to close this gap. I want to get more women into tech. So let's start with the facts. Let's start with the science, and let's try and build an environment, a set of systems that's going to facilitate Google reaching its goal of getting more women into tech. And so what he did was innocently try to solve a problem. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
you madman. What are you doing? You're clubbing baby seals by trying to solve a problem rationally.
In a lot of ways, he's being excoriated. He's an engineer, but excoriated for communicating like a man.
Wouldn't it be great if it turns out he's an engineer who's just on the spectrum, and that just comes out in the lawsuit? Like, I have autism. I'm like, oh God, no! It's a guy with Asperger's, and we fired him.
Come on, look. I would like to think that people could be rational and empirical without being autistic.
I know. But here's something that I do think is important, and that's a really good point, because we've talked about this. You look at John Oliver, for example, his bid on the Border Patrol, which is really hard for us to rebut because there wasn't a lot of information in there. It was basically logical fallacy using data up until 2012, not including new data. But he basically says, okay, let's boil it down. He doesn't want a wall. He doesn't like border patrol, so he doesn't think more border patrol agents will help. He believes in sanctuary cities. There's really no solution there. They're just saying this is bad, that's bad. It's like the cool kids saying, ha ha ha, you suck, you didn't do well, but they haven't tried anything. Here's a guy, you see this on the right a lot. He's actually offering solutions. He's trying to be productive as opposed to just saying, you're bad, your ideas are bad. It really seemed like an earnest attempt to help Google. Even if that's just opinion, that's how it came across, which to me tells me they don't want a discussion. The same reason that we've had to move our interviews around and you've been incredibly accommodating, not a single leftist would come on this show to discuss it because they don't want to talk about it.
Well, first of all, I think John Oliver does have a solution. The solution to the problem of let's not enough people are voting Democrat, so let's bring a whole bunch of people in from Mexico, 80% plus of whom are going to vote Democrat in the long run. Of course, the families are going to vote Democrat. So he is trying to solve a problem. It's just not the problem he says he's trying to solve. The problem is, well, the Democrats are out of power. We better get more people in who are going to vote Democrat, and that's the goal. So everybody is trying to solve a problem. Just some people are trying to do it on the surface, and some people are trying to do it surreptitiously or kind of under the table. So, yeah, this guy wanted to solve a problem. Earnestly, in good faith, using the best scientific data available, he went and tried to solve the problem. And it's sort of like, I don't know, going up to the early church and saying, hey, I've solved the problem. It's not the Earth that's at the center of the solar system. It's the sun. Hey, everyone's going to love me because I finally solved the problem.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Brag,
yeah. Oh, wait,
so
why am I in the stocks? Why am I here now? I thought I was helping people. This doesn't make sense at all. Are we reading the same book?
Imagine if there was a pill that could cure all of this unconscious racism. Boom, you take it, and now there's no such thing. Well, an entire multi-billion-dollar industry bites the dust. It's important to recognize there are people with entrenched interests who want to keep social problems going. It is where they make their money. It's the friction which produces the sparks of their income.
Yeah, otherwise Al Sharpton will be outside rattling a tin cup, and people wouldn't give it to him because they think he'd be using it to buy drugs. Probably right, too.
Probably right.
So we had a meeting with YouTube in New York. I remember they brought us out, and there were a lot of other conservatives there, and they did talk about how they wanted to correct some issues. And then, remember, the conversation kind of ended up moving on, and they asked us, have you thought about changing your content? And I swear to you, and there's some very nice people. There are a couple people there who behind the scenes really want to help, but they're so terrified. They're like a beaten child.
Hey, Satanists, I've got a great idea. Different God. Work for you. Would that help you out quite a bit?
Yeah.
Worship Bob Marley. Everybody loves that guy.
Well, I'm a LaVeyan Satanist, so technically I don't believe in God. Oh my God, you're missing the point. But yes, it really. Do you think about changing your content? And they said, well, with restricted mode, we really say could a 6-year-old watch it? And that's when I said, oh, okay. Started reading it. Here we go. What was it? It was shame on a nigga who tried to run game on a nigga. I'll f*** your ass up. You'd show this to your 6-year-old? And they were like, oh, you could like they had a heart attack. I'm like, listen, I'm not. This is unrestricted.
I think that is part of leftist sex education for 6-year-olds.
Yes,
I think that is pretty much the textbook. So that's important to put in consideration.
Yeah, that right after they put a condom on a banana.
This goes alongside with the labeling thing too, right? So I've got a blow-up video that's happening at the moment, which is my interview with the guy from Google. And yeah, so a bunch of news outlets, media outlets have written about it. And it's like Gollum with the ring, because they know the right thing to do is to present the arguments and let the audience decide for themselves. They know that that's the right thing to do. That's the responsible thing to do. But they just can't help themselves. They have to put Stefan Molyneux, noted alt-right, whatever it's going to be, right? They can't stop themselves. They can't not frame it. They can't not give you the words that are supposed to make you think negatively of the person. They can't just say, here's the arguments, here's the perspective, here's the sources, here's the data, decide for yourself. It's like, no, we can't. We have to condition what it is that you're going to say. And I think that's the difference. You and I and the alternative media, as it's called, I trust my audience. I'll present the arguments, let them think for themselves. But the mainstream media, they can't resist having to frame it. I mean, Dr. Jordan Peterson, alt-right, are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. But they just can't help themselves. If it's an opinion they don't like or an argument they don't like, they have to frame it with some snarky negative comment. They just and I think that's a huge difference. People pick up on that a lot.
You do. It really does come down to sociological issues. It comes down to psychological issues with him. This is a guy who, in order to convince people he was a deity, or his dad did, said he got 11 holes in one in his first game of golf. Like, if of all the things to pick,
he was driving at age 3 or something.
Yeah, you can't get the Kim Jong-un haircut. It's banned. The 85 lesbian haircut is illegal.
Is it banned
for
or is it banned?
It's banned. It's banned. I mean, if you look at the way that they treat, this is one thing I will say though, and I think everyone can agree on. When you have moral relativists from the left saying, "Well, what makes us think that we're good and they're bad?" Because they punch women in the stomach in internment camps until they have abortions. Because they rip children from their parents and murder them. They are the most cruel regime you have ever seen if you read up on what happens in those camps. And it's not the same as saying, oh, you know what, Donald Trump has someone from Goldman Sachs in his cabinet.
Right. No, it is I think the most despotic, dictatorial, evil, and vicious regime. And, where are the Marxists who take ownership of it? This was founded as a communist country, and this is exactly where it's ended up. So can we just learn this lesson for once in our damn history? This is where communism leads. This is where expanding state control over the economy, over personal lives, this is where it all leads. This is the end goal. Concentration camps, starvation, a huge elite. And what is his father? They plucked the feathers of 10,000 little fluffy birds to make his pillows. I mean, it's completely psychotic, insane, evil, dictatorial, monstrous mess. And I want the Marxists to step up and say, oh yeah, he's one of us. So this all started with us.
Yeah, well, it's almost as bad a regime as Google, and I blame the evil of the North Koreans on religion. As you know, they are the cause of all wars, like we see in North Korea. But devout Christians and or Muslims and North Koreans, I don't know, take your pick at this point. Stefan Molyneux.
Hang on, just one last thing. I thought the End Times guy was going to be a bit more satanic and devilish looking than squat fat Elvis. That shadow hanging over humanity does not work for me as far as terrifying.
And I see before me a pale horse, and beneath him a man with a Terminator 1 lesbian-looking haircut. And hell followed with him.
Karaoke ends the world.
Yeah, I know. It really is what, you expect the devil to be charming or really scary. This is it's kind of laughable. Stefan Molyneux on Twitter, on YouTube, it's Free Domain Radio. Get that right. Free Domain Radio. He has a book coming out. When it comes out, we will have him back for an hour. Stefan, thank you. And please, everyone, go watch his interview with James Damore. Thank you so much for being here, sir. We appreciate it.
Thanks, my friend. A great pleasure.
Roman Millennial next. If you or a loved one have suffered side effects from Ben Shapiro's tumbler, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Ben Shapiro's double-wall insulated tumbler has been found to increase the risk of rare cancers like mesothelioma, non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and severe AIDS. Please don't wait. If you have mesothelioma, non-Hodgkin lymphoma, or severe AIDS as a direct result of your subscription to The Ben Shapiro Show and his asbestos-laden tumbler, quickly join Mug Club at louderwithcrowder.com/mugclub for your free information packet. An annual membership for $99, $69 for students, veterans, or active military today. Hurry, don't wait, as your life may depend on it. Join today at louderwithcrowder.com/mugclub. Hey, you feel good about yourself this week, seeing a guy get fired at Google? Guess what? That could be any one of us. And that's why we have Mug Club. For the daily content, everyone there, you get a daily show, you get morning grinders every single day, every single week. Why did I say every single day? It's not false advertising. my brain is just, I just have a low IQ. Louderwithcrowder.com / short-term working memory is not that great. We almost got heat stroke earlier today. Louderwithcrowder.com / mug club. It keeps everyone employed, and it allows us to not be beholden to YouTube. And here's one thing. I don't want you to just look at it and say, well, you know, at the $5-something a month, it's $69 annually if you're a student, veteran, or active military. Most people who watch us on YouTube are students, or a significant amount. I don't want you to say, well, you know, is it the $5-something for a mug? And I want you to think, how important is it for content like this not to go away, like guys at Google? Because that's what's happening. And that's why we're joining ranks with other people. That's why we're bringing more people on. And the more you support the paid content, the more we're able to get free content out there and just be a thorn in their side. Louderwithcrowder.com / mug club. It's a hand-etched, wonderful mug. You also actually do get a mug. It doesn't travel as well as Shapiro's tumbler. I'll give him that. But and it doesn't stand up as well to a bat. No, that little bastard is tough. But you know, listen. When you get up in the morning, you don't want to go, oh, what is this thing? What is this coffee? Is it light roast, taste of steel? You don't want steel in your mouth. No, that's why you get porcelain. Go watch people, The Art of Cupping with Tea and Coffee. They only do it in ceramic or porcelain. Louderwithcrowder.com / mug club. Sign up. Otherwise, well, maybe if you don't sign up, if you just hate good beverages. That was a drowning dance. Roaming millennial. Such a shame that she didn't show herself for months or years.
That still boggles my mind to today.
It is bizarre. Maybe she's retarded.
She's retarded.
It sounds worse when you say it because of the enunciation for some reason. Speaking of, that was a drowning dance. People have been requesting the drowning dance. This is something we were just talking about this about earlier in the first segment. About offensive used to have a standard. Now it's just whatever makes you feel bad about yourself. Yeah. I was actually talking on Glenn Beck's show about this today. You know, I have this nagging injury, and I haven't had a lot of time, so I haven't had time to go to the gym. I can't really lift weights because I have a nagging injury in my knee and my shoulder right now. So I'm like, well, you know what? I'm just not going to do nothing, so just get in the pool and do something. And
I have all those problems, too.
Yes.
All of them.
Just got in the pool and did something. By the way, found out you can get really dehydrated in the pool without knowing, because you're swimming for 40 minutes, but unlike you're not drinking water, so be careful with that, especially in 95-degree heat. And there were these water weights at the pool where I was going, and I actually used them. I was like, oh, you know what? That actually, it felt pretty good to move my shoulders, and it seemed to kind of help my rotator. So I went online on Amazon and looked at water weights. I thought, hey, I feel good about myself, even though I can't really do what I'm doing something. And then I started reading the reviews, and it was all like 97-year-old women with water aquatic classes. And they were using the big, they're like, I use the big one, but it's not enough resistance. And I felt bad about myself. And then I felt even worse about myself when the internet had tracked that I had read the reviews. And so I'd be going on other sites and I'd be seeing ads for mesothelioma and Wilford Brimley diabetes. And it made me feel bad about myself, but no one was trying to make me feel, I'm not a 97-year-old woman, but I'm going like, this is what the internet thinks I am? But no one was doing that on purpose.
But the Face app, you could be.
The Face app, you could be. But you were making a point earlier during the break that I think was an important one.
Yeah. Well, I was saying, it's funny how we talk so much this week about the tech industry. We talk with Owen about the entertainment industry and the culture of silencing that goes on there with any kind of opinions or ideologies of dissent.
Well, now you're seeing that, as we just talked about, for the first time openly, they're trying to transition that to the scientific community. They used to say we're the party of science, but now there's the entertainment industry, writers, reporters are telling the scientific community they need to shut up. Yeah.
So I think there's obviously a real problem with the silencing culture of the left.
Yeah.
They don't want information out there. They don't want anybody to, ironically, diversity of opinion and thought and ideas. But I think there's also a really big problem with the culture of cowardice amongst conservatives to speak up. Because you think about this, think about the Google memo and the polling. 50% agreed that James should not have been fired. Where are all these people?
Yeah.
At some point, these A-list actors of the world who are hiding in their cabins, conservative.
Yeah.
At some point, we need these people to step up and come out. At some point,
and we know a lot of them too. That's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. I mean, obviously, you've seen people on this show. You can do the math. People who haven't necessarily been. They've even come on the show and said we can't necessarily discuss politics.
Yeah.
But clearly, if someone like Gary Sinise is coming on the show, and you see his Lieutenant Dan Foundation, where he's entertains the troops, you can probably guess where he lines up.
Yeah.
He just doesn't want to be ugly politically. And you can guess any other celebrities who we often have on where they line up. But it's true, there are way, way more who are in the closet.
There's way more, and it's just they're giving way to this culture of silencing and this radical swing to the left that we see. And it's just kind of like, it's like what you're allowing, and you're almost, at one point, are we kind of guilty too?
Yeah, well, I don't think we are.
Allowing it.
I don't think we are.
We, not specifically.
I certainly don't think we are. I don't think the Ben Shapiro's of the world are. I don't think Dean Cain is, Owen Benjamin, Nick DiPaolo.
Painted Muhammad eating a big pile of poop.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of done your,
or people like people like Jim Norton. We want to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's important, though. I think that's a good point. And just think about this. Let me draw a hypothetical scenario out for you. Okay, at Google, if 50% of those people who didn't think it was that offensive, let's say it were just 25. Let's say it were only 30% of people. If they actually said something, if they actually, hold on, we really don't think that's offensive, the guy wouldn't have been run out on a rail. The guy wouldn't have been fired.
You think Google wants to lose half their employees?
No. We wouldn't have the problem with Google. We wouldn't have the problem with YouTube. We wouldn't have the problem with Facebook. If people in the entertainment industry, when you look at them, when they're polled individually, when you look at people behind closed doors and they say, yeah, man, I really agree with you on this. If they spoke up, we wouldn't all have to mutter these things. We wouldn't all have to be behind closed doors. And I think it's also, this is a good example. We were at the YouTube conference, the meeting in New York. Yeah. Now, the Daily Wire people, the people who do PragerU, they were there. They were fantastic. Yeah. And they were really kind of allies when we started asking some uncomfortable questions. But you and I both know, people there who were going, well, and afterwards we had to fill out a form.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they said, well, we haven't had any other conservatives who have complained about YouTube or our policies. We haven't gotten any on the forums. Remember they said that to us?
Yeah.
And there were at least 20 plus conservative representatives there at YouTube. Yeah. And that really pisses me off. It really does piss me off. When you work for a think tank and you go out there and you say, oh, we're fighting the good fight, and you raise millions upon millions, tens of millions of dollars, depending on the think tanks, depending on the nonprofits that are out there, because that's also a big problem with the conservative movement, is it's almost entirely funded by nonprofits. Ironically, for people who consider themselves capitalists, they're also cowards when it comes out to taking risks, it seems, as far as people who are forwarding the conservative movement. When you raise all of this money and you send to your donors, and I know this because I've worked with conservative nonprofits, and I've acted as a consultant to them years ago, and I said, oh, I'm never going to do it again because like banging my head against a wall at some point. I felt like the Kool-Aid guy trying to run through a wall, only I just shattered. Instead of, oh yeah, it was just, oh no, everything just broke because that's the wall.
It's like the power team, but like if it was me.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And you send these papers out to their donors and these requests, and they say, hey, look at all these things we accomplished. And they send out research papers, and they send out data that they've collected, or they send out maybe that's a protest that they took part in. And the only reason they did it was so they can send it out to people who fund them more. They're not actually looking to ruffle feathers. When it comes time to actually just fill out a form with YouTube or Facebook or Google, just fill out a form. They don't do that, let alone go out of their way to make calls, track people down, send emails, and send these people in positions of power maybe some information that might be uncomfortable. They won't even fill out an automatic form. And like you said, people who won't stand up, at a certain point you are using, and they hide under this veil of politeness. And I think we see that from the right. And it is true because you do want to be able to engage in conversations. You want to be decent people. But then you have people who simply go out and try to virtue signal. And this is the term that people have used, where there shouldn't be. You compromise where there shouldn't be compromise. You can be polite and still completely disagree. By the way, that's another thing. Conservatives, and I think sometimes we've kind of crossed wires with Mark Duplass and even sometimes Dave Rubin, and then we agreed. Finding common ground is not the same as being civil to someone. You can be civil and you don't have to find any common ground at all. It's okay. You don't have to say, well, what if I move in and you move in? No, we don't need to move in. We don't need to be.
What do you think about like 6.5-month abortions? What do you think about those ones?
What do you think about those?
We'll just keep moving it.
What do you think about can you biologically change your sex if you cut off one ball? No, I'm not moving to the center. Now, I don't need to tell you you're an absolute retard idiot / you are a waste of oxygen because you believe that. But I can say no balls. Cut off one ball? No. Half a ball? No balls. But thank you for stopping by. And we hide under this veil of politeness with conservatives. And I think it's because we generally are more polite. We generally are probably more, I guess I would say at least professional. And sometimes we allow politeness to act as an excuse for cowardice. At a certain point, you're no longer being polite when you're not sending in the YouTube forums, when you're not speaking out against Google, but then you're muttering under an anonymous name on Reddit, when you'll send us an email, and I know we have a lot of people out there, you'll send us an email saying, oh man, you know, I really wish I could show this in college because they're teaching us this school. But how would you go about arguing it? How would you try and do it subtly, but I don't want to fail? You know what? At some point, you're going to have to take a failing grade. Don't do it all the time. At some point, you might have to lose out on some roles in the entertainment industry. At some point, your scientific thesis might be considered offensive to someone in the LGBTQAIP. Okay.
Silent
community.
apostrophe 5.
Silent apostrophe. And then number 2, send that to me at scredit. That was an actual tweet. At some point, you simply pointing out biology is going to be offensive to somebody who's going to call in sick because they don't like that you presented their biology, which might lend itself to them being more high-strung in the work environment and calling in sick. They took sick days at Google because they said women don't handle stress in the workplace as well as men.
You can't write it better.
So they called in sick because work was too stressful. At some point, you're just going to have to take a big red F if you want to push it forward. And here's the thing, too. This is why you don't see it publicly. We always say, well, how is it that it's so far left in the entertainment industry, in all of journalism, in all of academia? You know why? Yeah, it tends to lend itself, and there have been proactive movements for leftists to go in there. I'll give you that, absolutely. And people have written about that. Thomas Sowell's written about that. Ben Shapiro's written about that as it relates to the entertainment industry. You've heard some celebrities come out and speak up against it. But you know what? That's only one part of the equation. Leftists can only go in and conquer it if you remain silent for so long. And you don't see that. That's why there's this disconnect. You don't see it in the general populace. In the general populace, the populace that elects presidents, you see them tired of political correctness. At every dinner table across the country, on any given night, guess what? You can see people saying, no, that's not true. Well, just in case you speak out against the idea that you can change your biological sex, there's a brother or a cousin or a sister saying, no, I don't agree with that. Or there's someone saying, hey, I find it really offensive for you to say that men and women are different. There's a dad saying, don't be a dumbass, and smacking his son on the back of the head. This is occurring all across the country. The only place it's not occurring is in positions of power because of cowardice. And if nothing else this week, I hope that you see with Google, you see the ramifications. People lose their jobs. Lives get destroyed. We're really blessed here because we've grown this. We've created something that's been profitable enough for everyone to make a good living, and we're able to continue doing this. And if you join Mug Club, we can grow and employ more people. And we are really grateful. We consider ourselves very, very fortunate. But there are a lot of other people out there who don't have it. And just like Sarah Silverman and these comedians who got by Amy Schumer by being shock comics and they closed the door behind them, you can't be a conservative, get your way into power by being quiet, and then close the door behind you. When someone's being run out at Google and 50% of you think it's wrong, you need to say something. You can't be in the entertainment industry where James Cromwell comes out and says, you know what, we need to educate conservatives. We need to put out more propaganda effectively. You can't be a comedian and watch Chelsea Handler say, we need to make it illegal for people to find racist jokes funny. At some point, you're no longer being polite. You are just a spineless pussy. And I would love to see more people, specifically in instances like this, the next time a Google incident happens, or whatever develops here from the Google situation. That 50%, hey, you know what? How about this? How about 50% of that 50% speaks up? We're doing the best we can, and I know a lot of other people are out there, but I know that they could use some reinforcements. I know they could use some air support. And guess what? Right now, the time is right, because you see it at the culture at large. You just don't see it in those towers of power. And I think the people out there who are watching, you know what I'm talking about. I hope we see this come to fruition here in the next couple of months, because it really could be the defining moment in this country. It's a winnable fight right now. It's a really winnable fight. You just have to stop being a coward. Buck up.